Do you believe time only moves in one direction? What if there were clues suggesting that someone had once stepped into the past, or perhaps even glimpsed the future? From a Swiss watch buried in a 400-year-old tomb to a woman in 1928 holding what looks like a modern cell phone, these stories don't just challenge logic. They leave scientists stunned and silent. Today, World Mysteries invites you to explore 8 of the most famous and puzzling time travel cases ever recorded. Mysterious events that remain unexplained to this day. Could these be real evidence of time travel or just illusions of history? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to World Mysteries so you won't miss any of our next strange journeys through time. 1. The Disappearing Hotel, a French time slip mystery. It was October 1979. Two British couples, the Simpsons and the Gisbys, were driving through the French countryside on their way to a long-awaited holiday in Spain. As dusk settled in, they decided to stop for the night at a quiet, old-fashioned hotel they found off the beaten path. The building had an antique charm, wooden beams, shuttered windows, and staff dressed in uniforms that looked like something from the early 1900s. There were no TVs, no phones, and an eerie silence blanketed the halls. Dinner was served in a traditional style, and the room rates were astonishingly cheap. The couples felt lucky to have stumbled upon such a quaint place and even took several photographs to remember the experience. But the real mystery began on their return trip. They tried to locate the same hotel to rest again, retracing the exact route. Yet the hotel was nowhere to be found. The landscape was unchanged, the same road, the same forest, but the hotel had seemingly vanished into thin air. They drove for hours, asking locals if they knew of such a place. No one did. And then came the final blow. When they looked through the photos taken during their stay, the images were completely blank, as if the hotel had never existed. This case was later featured in the TV series Strange But True on ITV and is often cited in discussions about time slips, strange phenomena where people seem to momentarily step outside of our current timeline and into another. So the question lingers, did they spend the night in a hotel from the past, or had they unknowingly crossed into a crack in time itself? If the previous case left us puzzled by a hotel that vanished without a trace, this next story flips the narrative, where time itself seemed to open and invite the past into the present. Number 2. The Ghosts of Petit Trianon, Meeting the Queen of the Past. August 10th, 1901. Two English academics, Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdan, were strolling through the gardens of the Versailles estate in France. As they entered the path leading to the small and elegant Petit Trianon, once the private retreat of Queen Marie Antoinette, neither woman expected what would become a legendary time slip experience. The atmosphere changed the moment they stepped into the garden. Moberly later wrote, "Everything suddenly felt unnatural and therefore unpleasant. Even the trees appeared flat and lifeless, like they were painted onto a backdrop. There was no interplay of light and shadow, and not a single breeze stirred the leaves. Then they began to see strange figures, people dressed in 18th century clothing, moving slowly, almost mechanically, as if trapped in a suspended moment. One man in a gray cloak stood silently beneath a tree, watching them with an expression that didn't quite belong to this world. And then came the most shocking sight. A woman sitting calmly and sketching in the garden, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and flowing gown, her face eerily resembling known portraits of Marie Antoinette. None of the figures responded to the women's greetings or presence. It was as if Moberly and Jourdan had become invisible witnesses to a living memory. Later research would reveal that a path they walked that day hadn't existed for over 100 years, buried and forgotten beneath newer renovations. Their account, once dismissed as fantasy, has since become one of the most iconic examples of a time slip where the veil between past and present thins, just enough for history to breathe again. If Versailles can hold on to the past like an open book, then our next case will make you wonder, can the future come back to meet us? 3. The Mysterious Watch, a trace of the future in an ancient tomb. In December 2008, archaeologists in Shaanxi County, southern China, were excavating a sealed tomb estimated to be over 400 years old, dating back to the Ming Dynasty. Everything was going according to plan until they opened a tightly sealed stone coffin. As the dust of centuries filled the air, they discovered something resting beside the ancient remains, something that should never have been there. It was a modern wristwatch. Tiny, metallic, and styled like a ring, the object bore a single word engraved on its face: Swiss. The hour and minute hands were stopped at precisely 10:06. The design was unmistakably modern, yet the coffin had not been disturbed for centuries. One expert from the archaeological team told reporters, "We were shocked. There's no way such a watch could exist during that time period. Even the Qing dynasty never produced anything like this." So how did a modern object, a Swiss watch, end up inside a tomb sealed since the 16th century? Could someone, or something, have crossed time and left behind this small clue? No scientific explanation has ever fully accounted for the mystery. And like so many time-slip phenomena, the watch now lies buried beneath layers of unanswered questions. But if a tiny object can somehow leap across time and land in the heart of an ancient tomb, what would happen if an entire person vanished, only to reappear in another century? Let us know what you think about this idea in the comments. If a modern wristwatch found in an ancient tomb challenged our understanding of the past, then this next story might shake your belief in the stability of time itself, because this time, a man may have accidentally flown into the future. Number 4. Victor Goddard's Flight, a glimpse into the future. The year was 1935. Victor Goddard, a high-ranking officer in Britain's Royal Air Force, was piloting his aircraft over Scotland near the city of Edinburgh. Mid-flight, he suddenly encountered a bizarre storm: thick, dark clouds, violent winds, and lightning so intense he nearly lost control of the plane. As he struggled to regain stability, the skies abruptly cleared, and what he saw below stunned him. The Drem airfield, known at the time to be abandoned, now appeared completely renovated. The runways were clean, the hangars newly painted, and most oddly of all, strange new aircraft stood lined up neatly across the tarmac. Ground crews in blue uniforms moved busily around, preparing the planes. Everything looked modern, orderly, and completely out of place. Strangely, none of the people on the ground seemed to notice his plane flying overhead. When Goddard returned to his base, he reported the strange vision, but no one believed him. Drem Airfield was still deserted, just as it had always been. But 4 years later, during the early days of World War II, the Drem Airfield was reactivated, and to Goddard's shock, it matched exactly what he had seen in 1935. Blue uniforms, newly equipped planes, the exact scene he had flown over. So what really happened that day? Did Victor Goddard somehow fly through a temporal window, one that allowed him to see the future? Or was it a coincidence so precise it defied logic? If the future can be glimpsed through a storm, could someone already be moving through time, not just witnessing it, but leaving behind undeniable traces? 5. The time-traveling tourist, the man who didn't belong in 1941. In 1941, during the reopening ceremony of the Gold Bridge in British Columbia, Canada, a photograph was taken of a crowd gathered to witness the event. At first glance, it was just another piece of historical documentation. But decades later, when the photo was displayed at the Bralorne Pioneer Museum, everything changed. Among the sea of people dressed in traditional 1940s fashion, one man stood out like a glitch in reality. He wore a modern-looking graphic t-shirt under a zip-up sweater, futuristic wraparound sunglasses, and held what appeared to be a small portable camera, none of which should have existed in 1941. Viewers quickly dubbed him the time-traveling hipster. No one in the photo seems to notice anything unusual about him. He stands there calmly, as if he belongs, and yet everything about him screams the future. Skeptics have tried to explain the phenomenon, suggesting it might be a misunderstanding of vintage clothing or odd fashion choices. But no one has been able to definitively explain the modern design of the shirt, the style of the sunglasses, or the strange object in his hands. So who was he? A fashion-forward man ahead of his time? A wanderer accidentally displaced from the future? Or perhaps the first public glimpse of time travel caught on camera? If time travelers can walk among us unnoticed, could they be here right now? And what if someone was ripped from their own era, never to return? Share your thoughts in the comments below. 6. The accident of Rudolph Fentz, a man caught between centuries. It was a warm night in June 1950. Times Square, New York, buzzed with its usual glow, flashing lights, music, and late-night crowds. Just after 11 p.m., bystanders noticed something strange. A man in his 30s, standing at an intersection, visibly confused and out of place. He wore a long dark coat, high-collared shirt, polished boots with metal buckles, and a soft top hat. He looked like he had walked straight out of the 1800s. Then, without warning, tragedy struck. A speeding taxi hit the man. He died instantly. But what came next only deepened the mystery. During the investigation, police discovered unusual items in his pockets, and none of them showed any signs of age. A business card reading Rudolph Fentz with an address on Fifth Avenue. About $70 in old U.S. currency, long out of circulation. A letter postmarked from Philadelphia, dated June 1876, sent to the same address. A brass token from a saloon no one had ever heard of. Not even elderly locals. There were no modern documents, no ID, no trace of the man's existence in the 20th century. The mystery led investigators to a woman living in Florida, the daughter-in-law of a man named Rudolph Fentz. She explained that her father-in-law disappeared one evening in 1876. He was just 29 years old, said he was going for a walk, but he never came back. Investigators dug into old missing persons reports, and what they found was shocking. Every detail matched the man from Times Square. His name, his age, his clothing, even his physical features. So what happened? Where was Rudolph Fentz for 75 years? And how did he suddenly appear, only to die in 1950? When time begins to bend, it doesn't just leave behind clues, it can tear people from history itself. If a man pulled through time and dropped in the middle of New York stunned us, then this next case will make you rethink what the past may have accidentally recorded with its own eyes. Number 7. The CD-ROM from the 1800s, future technology in an ancient painting. It all began with a peculiar painting, believed to have been created sometime in the early 1800s. The artwork depicts Joseph Smith, the founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon faith, standing among 8 men holding what he described as the golden plates, sacred objects central to the foundation of his religious teachings. At first glance, the painting seems historically appropriate, until you look closely at what Smith is holding. In his hands are 2 round, reflective discs, each with a perfect hole in the center, shimmering as if made from polished metal. They look uncannily like modern CD-ROMs, a technology not developed until the 1980s, nearly 150 years later. There is no evidence that the painter had any reason, or even the imagination, to depict futuristic technology. At the time, the very concept of digital data storage was entirely inconceivable. And yet, here it was. The mysterious objects in the painting aren't stone tablets, aren't traditional engraved plates, but rather closely resemble 20th century compact discs, as if they never belonged in the 19th century to begin with. Was the artist unknowingly painting an object from the future, or did Joseph Smith somehow come into contact with something far ahead of its time? When future technologies are captured in ancient artwork, the line between myth, faith, and reality begins to dissolve. Are you ready for the final case? Because the strangest time slip of all is still waiting. Remate, the first mobile phone, the woman from 1928. Our journey now arrives at perhaps the most visually compelling clue of all, a short film clip that appears to defy everything we know about the history of technology. In 1973, the first official mobile phone, the Motorola Dynatac, was invented by John F. Mitchell and Martin Cooper. Bulky and heavy by today's standards, it was still a major breakthrough in human communication. But what if someone had already used a mobile phone decades earlier? A silent black and white film clip, reportedly taken in 1928, shows what appears to be a woman walking outside a movie theater, behind-the-scenes footage from Charlie Chaplin's The Circus. As she enters the frame from the right, something immediately feels off. She's holding a small object, compact, palm-sized, and pressing it to her ear. She's speaking, smiling, and walking, exactly like someone on a mobile phone call. The video sparked a firestorm of debate online and among historians. If it's not a mobile phone, what was it? No communication device in 1928 resembled that form or was used in such a manner. But if it is a mobile phone, how could it possibly exist nearly 50 years before its invention? Skeptics suggested it might be a hearing aid or a portable radio receiver, but none of the known devices from that era match the size, behavior, or posture shown in the clip. And most chilling of all, no one around her seems to notice. It's as if she doesn't belong there. So what are we really seeing? A time-traveling visitor accidentally captured on film? A glitch in time, frozen in celluloid? Or the smoking gun of time travel hiding in plain sight? And if that woman truly came from the future, how many others have walked among us, unnoticed, undocumented, and unexplainable? We've just explored 8 mysterious cases, subtle clues that could completely shake our understanding of time. A modern watch buried deep in the past. A man who vanished in the 1800s, only to reappear in 1950s New York. A woman walking through a 1928 film frame, holding what looks exactly like a mobile phone. So, is time truly a straight line? Or is it a vast and tangled web, where, now and then, someone slips out of place? Do you believe these are signs of real-time travel, or just chilling coincidences? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're fascinated by the mysteries of time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to World Mysteries so you never miss our next journey into the unknown. We'll see you in the next adventure. Because this world still hides many secrets waiting to be uncovered.